On today's show, we've got news and notes after the Ottawa Senators return to practice following the Four Nations break.
And with Jacob Bernard-Docker back skating, how should the Ottawa Senators handle having 8 defensemen?
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today is Wednesday, February 19th, and Pillsy, the Ottawa Senators were kind of back on the ice at practice, but no Linus Ullmark, no Brady Tkachuk, no Nicholas Matin-Palo, and Thomas Chabot left after getting hit in the face.
And no Jake Sanderson either. This, what did TSN 1200 call it? A hodgepodge, a practice, word of the day. But yeah, certainly that is not the NHL roster and NHL lineup Sens fans want to see heading into Saturday's game up against the Montreal Canadiens.
And I buried the lead because it makes sense why all those Four Nations participants were not there. They're not expected to be back on the ice until Thursday, or in the case of Tkachuk and Sanderson, Saturday is when they will be rejoining the team. Obviously a game day, but they'll get there in time for the morning skate if there is one. But the real news is that Josh Norris and Shane Pinto, who we reported were skating on their own, Travis Green confirmed our report, but they were not on the ice for practice yesterday. Does that concern you as we still have 3 days until the Sens are back on the ice against the Habs?
I mean, yeah, I guess concern is the right word, Ross. I was trying to be optimistic, hoping that one of them would be back, but in the back of my mind, I kind of didn't let myself get too excited. So I don't think either one of those guys is going to play that game against the Montreal Canadiens, which is concerning for sure. Ottawa Senators being without their second and third line centers, but luckily, there isn't a kind of tight schedule right after this. I mean, really, they've got a slow schedule heading out of the break. They pretty much just play Montreal on Saturday. Then they have 3 days off until they play the Winnipeg Jets on the Wednesday, and then they don't play again till the Saturday. So really only 3 games in 10 days here starting today. So that's going to give more time for players like Josh Norris, players like Shane Pinto to hopefully come back. I'm hoping, Ross, my new kind of checkpoint is that one of Josh Norris or Shane Pinto will be back for March 1st, the Hamburglar game where we will have boots on the ground up against the San Jose Sharks.
And we'll reminisce about the Hamburglar at the end of today's show. I'm more than just a little concerned. I'm anxious because the Senators proved that without those two in the lineup, they cannot generate enough offense to win games.
Up against the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers, 2 very different teams than Montreal, but I see your point.
Yeah, well, with Montreal, you throw the record books out. I mean, it doesn't matter where they are in the standings. It's going to be an intense, emotional game, and you need your best players in the lineup for it. It's just, I can't handle this losing streak. It's already at 3 games. I can't handle it getting to 4 or 5. And if it gets to 4, and you got the best team in the league coming into your barn on a Wednesday night, I don't know how confident I'd be. And we haven't looked at the standings in a while, but I took a peek this morning, Pillsy, and
yeah,
they're just as tight.
Yeah, the standings have not changed since that 3-game losing streak was going on, Ross. I mean, I guess it's still going on, unfortunately, technically. But yeah, the Ottawa Senators sitting at 62 points in the first wild card spot. The Detroit Red Wings nipping on their heels with 61 in that second wild card spot. And then you've got Columbus and Boston with 60 points right there. And then, I mean, even you could go to the New York teams, Ross, the New York Rangers with 58 and the Islanders with 53. That's only a 5-point spread. That's not that crazy considering how the NHL can go. And especially, Ross, the Islanders, you know they're going to get a handful of loser points in that stretch too. So this is going to be a big stretch here. I like the Montreal game obviously is huge. The Winnipeg Jet game, you want them to win, but I don't have high expectations for that. I'm not about to call it a scheduled loss, but I don't have high expectations there. And then the San Jose game, that's got to be one where the Ottawa Senators, regardless of who's in the lineup, Ross, they got to take care of business there. It's a home game. They're going to be celebrating the Hamburglar run. And the San Jose Sharks, like, that's a weak team to begin with. And keep in mind, they just moved Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci, so they weakened their lineup even more. So that's a team you got to be able to beat up on and really get the offense going.
The Sens and Habs are tied for the longest current losing streak in the National Hockey League with 3 losses in a row.
Well, that's good at least. At least they're just as down bad as we are.
Misery loves company. Well, we remember how great the out-of-town scoreboard was, right? Only Philadelphia and the Rangers are coming off a win. Everyone else of the 10 teams in the wild card have L number beside their streak. It was lucky for Ottawa, really. I mean, it comes down to luck where they weren't getting any points, but everyone below them just kind of stagnated at a perfect time. But Sens need Norris and Pinto in the lineup, but it looks like they will get reinforcements. Noah Gregor was back up front, so that'll help their bottom 6 with some speed, which is a much-needed element. The PK's been pretty good, though, of late for Ottawa, so he'll just bolster that even more. But it'll be nice to see Noah Gregor get back in the lineup. It's been quite a while for him, eh? Do you expect him to just pick up where he left off?
I mean, I'm not sure how, like, if he was skating or fine over the break, so I'm not sure kind of how far along into his recovered state he is. What was his injury? I forget. It seems so long ago. Was that I feel like it was a lower body injury. Didn't he crash into the boards awkwardly?
Yeah, it was lower body.
Excuse me. So that's tough because, like you mentioned, his big thing is his speed. So it's going to be hard for him to kind of get back into the swing of things, probably. And when was that? That was back in December.
No. It was January 9th.
Okay. Well,
so right after. It was the game after the road trip.
Yeah, so that's been quite some time for Noah Gregor, but that's a player that excites me, Ross. So, like, I maybe have too high expectations of him, but that speed element is just something the Sens don't have a lot of, and I really feel like if he's put with the right line mates, like if he can get with Shane Pinto when Shane Pinto's healthy, like a line of Gregor, Pinto, and Amadio, because I got to assume Nick Cousins isn't going to be back anytime soon. So if he takes Cousins' spot on that third line on the wing, I think he could have success there. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up playing once the roster and lineups is kind of actually set for what it will be on Saturday. But I know it's a small victory, Ross, but I am glad to see that Noah Gregor's back because we need as much NHL experience in this lineup as possible.
And not only is Noah Gregor back, but Jacob Bernard Docker was back for his first full team practice since his high ankle sprain that happened 6 weeks ago. On the other side, we'll discuss how that crowds up the Sens blue line and if they're poised to trade themselves out of it. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Well, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Did you know that? Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling full longer. I love the no shells flavor. Ross is digging in to pistachios right now. There's any time of the day is great to have pistachios. The no shells one are awesome because you can just snack away and pick away. But my favorite flavor is the salt and pepper flavor. You get that saltiness, you get that pepper. Ross, what are you munching on right now?
Always the roasted, the salted and roasted. I actually love these.
Yep,
they're so delicious.
Just a classic. So whether you're snacking at your desk, like Ross is doing right now, on a road trip, or you just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And I love that they have so many different flavors as well. You got to try all the flavors. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub. Make sure to check out the GCP where the vibes are free at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe, walking distance from Lansdowne. So if you're out there doing some shopping or hanging out with your folks, may as well stop by the Glebe Central Pub and hang out amongst friends. It is your neighborhood pub that serves great food, has awesome drinks, and an atmosphere to match. Live music every Saturday night. They've got TVs everywhere. And you can also let them know on a Sens game day that you listen to Locked On Senators. Get 10% off your order just like that. What's great about that is that it also coincides with the Sens shuttle that takes you to and from the CTC. So you can buy your tickets online for the Glebe Central Pub shuttle at glebecentralpub.com. Check off that Locked On Senators sent you and make sure to get there early. The bus leaves an hour and 15 minutes before puck drop. Sue will get you there all in one piece and then bring you right back to the pub 15 minutes after the game. We'll see you there on March 1st. We're spending the entire afternoon at the Glebe Central Pub, and we might have to do a hamburger eating competition on March 1st for the Hamburglar night. So be a part of the fun. We've already got lots of tickets sold and hoping to get 2 buses to and from the CTC. So make sure you get your tickets, glebecentralpub.com, and visit them at 779 Bank Street. The vibes are free at the GCP. All right, Billsy. So we talked about the injured players, some not back yet. Noah Gregor is ready to go, in his words, on Saturday night. Jacob Bernard Docker, an interesting story. Been in and out of the lineup all season long. Suffered that awful high ankle sprain in practice, crashing into the boards, and he's been out for 6 weeks since. However, in that time, we learned who the Nicholas Matin-Palo phenomenon was. How do you handle this if you're the Ottawa Senators? Because Nicholas Matin-Palo needs waivers. Jacob Bernard Docker needs waivers. Travis Hamonic has a full no-move clause. He ain't going anywhere.
Thanks,
How do you handle this?
Yeah, I don't know, Ross. We were talking about this before the show started, and I went through all those options, and you're like, nope, waivers, nope, waivers, nope, no move clause. And it's just like, I don't like, usually not having enough depth on D is an issue for teams, and that's something they target in getting extra defensemen at the trade deadline. But the Ottawa Senators, they have a defenseman problem now. They have too many defensemen, and I think what I think might happen, Ross, is, and I believe the Ottawa Senators have done this in the past, is they're going to start dangling Jacob Bernard Docker as a potential trade option here. Because I think this is a guy, he's a young defenseman. He's shown he can play in the NHL. He has a bunch of NHL games under his belt. He's found ways to be successful in the NHL. We know he blocks shots with some of the best of them, especially among the Ottawa Senators. He's an RFA on an expiring deal. So if a team was to trade for him, they'd at least be in control of how his next contract would look. He's a right shot defenseman, something a lot of teams are looking for. So I think, unfortunately, I like Jacob Bernard Docker as a player, and I had high hopes for him, but it feels like to me, Ross, especially with the lack of draft capital that the Ottawa Senators have, it would make most sense if they use him as part of a package to bring in a more veteran player, most likely a forward, or if they move him to acquire draft capital or to just free up cap space, because that's what the Ottawa Senators need here. Because any other option really doesn't make sense for me right now. So it's not something that I'm like stoked about, but I do believe what makes most sense for the Sens, another team, and for Jacob Bernard Docker to get a new opportunity would be to have him available for trade.
Yeah, I think you're probably on the right track there. Obviously, you'd hopefully go to Travis Hamonic and be like, hey, what are you thinking? Like, are you just going to play out this year and retire? Are you going to try to get another contract somewhere? Do you want us to try to find you another home? If that's not moving the needle at all, then you just say, hey, Hammer, you're a good locker room guy. We'll keep you around. And you're probably not, hopefully, again, this is, if I was the general manager, you're not going to play a whole lot of games, but we would like to have you around. Matin-Palo is the guy who's not going anywhere, though. He's also an RFA, and like even Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts said they've got themselves a player, Nicholas Matin-Palo. You know how many NHL executives listen to 32 Thoughts and have watched the Four Nations? He would get claimed in an instant.
Oh, so quickly. And like, he kind of got goofed on going into this tournament, being like, wow, best on best international tournament, and Finland is bringing up a guy with 0 uh, NHL goals, or even does he have any points even?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so he was kind of getting goofed on the Athletic. They did their Four Nations prediction, and a bunch of the Athletic writers kind of goofed on him, being like, "Oh, we're forgetting about Nicholas Matinpalo and how he impacts the game." And everybody had their laughs, but then you saw how he played defensively, and you're like, "No, this guy is a solid defensive player." And with his chemistry with Tyler Clevin, it would be insane for the Ottawa Senators to, I mean, trading him would be one thing. Maybe you look at it as his value is high, but to send him down and think he could clear waivers would be a wild thing to do. So I think that's just a non-option. So they're going to be keeping him unless they decide to try to trade high, but I don't think that would be smart either. I think they should hold on to him. And as far as Travis Hamonic goes, Ross, like Travis Green genuinely values him. Like I don't think there's a single way that he takes that route and is like, hey, just hang out, be a good dude, and be around the locker room. Like, I think even when all these 8 guys come back, Travis Green isn't even considering Travis Hamonic not being a part of the regular rotation of playing defensemen. Like, it's just the reality of the situation. We've seen it when there's opportunities. Matinpalo was the guy getting healthy scratch, and Hamonic was playing. So I think clearly that's where the coaching staff's mind is. And unfortunately, the Travis Hamonic show will continue in Ottawa.
I just need to find a way to figure out the cap situation here. We're not cap guys. We don't pretend to be cap guys on the show, but like Ottawa, do they even have enough cap space to activate Gregor and JBD? Like they couldn't even get a call up, and both those guys are on LTIR.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe at this point, Ross, they put Cousins on LTIR or one of Pinto or Norris once they've kind of evaluated. But I don't know. And if people know the answer to that, let us know. Because the cap there's a couple things I just have decided I will never understand in life, Ross, and I won't put too many concentration calories on them. And figuring out the cap is one of those.
Yeah, it's got to be up there. I guess what you could do is send a forward down to the minors. It would just have to be a guy on a 2-way deal, or
they can't even really do that. They don't have enough forwards.
Yeah. Hey, has anyone ever played 10-8? Forget 11-7. Can we go 10-8 for a game and see how it goes?
Oh man, that would be crazy. I mean, yeah, or Ross, how about really getting trying something new and really changing the way hockey works? How about playing 3 defensemen at one time and 2 forwards at one time? See how that
Ottawa already did that when they had Erik Karlsson, pretty much.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens out of the break. I will say though, if we're taking a temperature, I would go with anxious more than excited. You?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but it's just going to be so awesome to have Ottawa Senators hockey back. Like, I can't wait to see those jerseys. I can't wait to do the postcasts again, Ross. I can't wait to watch the standings, update our stats ticker that we have on the bottom here. Like, this just, I need Ottawa Senators hockey back in my life. So although I am nervous Ross, if you're saying anxious, I'll go with nervous, which I think maybe is a tick down from anxious.
I think it is too. Yeah. And we also have the magic number, 36 points. The Ottawa Senators must accumulate 36 points at least if they want to give them a great chance of making the playoffs. That means win 2 games for every loss pretty much throughout the rest of the season. We'll be following along that very closely here on the Locked On Senators podcast. Sens are back on the ice at practice at 11:30 this morning. We're recording a little bit earlier, so for those news updates, it might be happening while you're listening to this. We'll have those for you at Sens Central on Twitter. On the other side, like this night couldn't get any better. March 1st, we'll be boots on the ground, Glebe Central Pub shuttle. We'll be at the game. Jake Sanderson bobblehead, and now it's Hamburglar night. The Sens announced yesterday that Andrew Hammond, 10 years after the Hamburglar run, will be making an appearance at the CTC. That conversation next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Pillsy. So just 3 more days until the Ottawa Senators take on the Montreal Canadiens at home. There are tickets still available for the Glebe Central Pub shuttle for that game, and we cannot wait for Sens hockey to be back. I guess I'll be able to forget about it for about 3 hours tomorrow night when we have the Four Nations final, Canada versus the United States of America. Just quickly on that, like how wild was yesterday? We were still in the depths of the trenches while everything was going on recording. Is Quinn Hughes coming? Is he playing? Then Quinn Hughes is in a non-contact jersey in Vancouver. Reports are that he literally flew from New Jersey, where he was, to Vancouver yesterday. And then they're like, oh, no, he's coming. But then he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to go. That's all. He was going to fly New Jersey to Vancouver, back to Boston to Vegas and play on Saturday night for Vancouver. Like, I don't know what was going on there, but it looks like Quinn Hughes will not be in the lineup for the final.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And I think this is one of those things where the NHL obviously hasn't done a tournament like this before, so it's impossible to kind of play out all the scenarios and have a solution for all of those scenarios that end up happening. But it's crazy that a guy that was supposed to be in the tournament is taken out of the tournament, and then now is brought back into the tournament, but now he might not end up coming back. Like it's just wild. I think I don't know what to think.
Nuts.
It's crazy. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it too, is that like this is a tournament that doesn't have any history. It's never been done before. And there's not any plans for it to happen again either. So it's just such a weird one-off tournament that we're going to look back and be like, remember that Four Nations face-off tournament? That was crazy.
But the credit goes to the players because they've bought in. Like, they're playing this like it's a Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Well, and I think, Ross, that's part of it is obviously it sucks the way international play has gone for hockey. Players not going to the Olympics due to CBA negotiations, COVID happening, and then just the mess that goes on with the Olympics. So I think the lack of that and all of those unfortunate things happening where best on best hockey hasn't happened has actually been a benefit for this Four Nations because it's built up so much pent up pressure and excitement for these guys, these high end players that haven't been able to go on that stage and be like, look, I've won Stanley Cups, I've won MVPs, I've got all these points and all these accolades in the NHL, but I want to show that I can do it when it's best on best. Like, that's what I really want. I'm talking mostly Connor McDavid. Like, that's for him. Like, well, he doesn't have a Stanley Cup, close though. But like, that's one of those things where he's like, I know I'm at the top of my game, but I want to be at the top of my game versus all the other best players in the world. And that's why guys like him are really getting up for this game. Even Jack Eichel, a guy who has a Stanley Cup, is saying that like these are some of the biggest games he's been a part of because he's one of those young players that hadn't got to experience the best on best international play. So it's awesome.
It's going to be an amazing game tomorrow. We can't wait for that. We'll have a preview in tomorrow's episode. We're also going to dive deeper into this, but I want to hit you with an over-under right now, Pillsy. The Ottawa Senators trade deadline preview. And I was listening to an interview on Missing Curfew with Keith Tkachuk, Big Walt, and very complimentary of the Ottawa Senators, saying that they're playing with more structure this year. He thinks that Travis Green's done a really good job. Mentioned, like, he's obviously watching every game. He knows that Ottawa's been without Linus Ullmark. He mentioned that the goaltending's been steady even without that. He said, look, they ran into some injuries, Norris and Pinto being out. It's, a big kick in the teeth. Obviously, this isn't a verbatim quote, but basically just said it's tough to win without them. They've hit a bit of a slide. He knows that they have to make the playoffs this year. Like, there wasn't already pressure to do so because the core guys aren't getting any younger. Brady Tkachuk's in year 7 year 7 right now and never played a playoff game. They need to make the playoffs. And Keith Tkachuk says it's on the organization now to add and be buyers at the deadline. Do you co-sign that message from Big Walt?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like before, Ross, I mean, you had your rebuilding years, the first, let's say three or even maybe even 4, but no past 4 years where.
Right. When the DeBrincat trade happened, your rebuild's done.
Yeah. Like that's you saying you're transitioning out of stockpiling draft picks and assets and trying to get NHL ready players and stars. So at that point, you're like, okay, we're just figuring things out. And then the onus kind of goes on the players. Like, all right, we've got all these young studs. We've paid you the money. You're all locked in for a long time. We've given you good contracts, all those kinds of things. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, it's on the players. But the players are getting it done right now. And obviously injuries happen. So you can't really blame the players for injuries. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, the players are holding their end of the bargain and they need help. It's the unfortunate situation that the Sens are in. If everyone was healthy, I don't think it would be as pressing, but that's not the case. And in sports, you can't rely on that to be the case either. So at this point, management has to look and be like, what can we do to make sure this team is set up for success? And I think there's clear issues that this team has, and they revolve around the cap, most of the issues, because without cap space, you can't do anything you want to do anyway. So you have to find a way to clear cap space. And the management's going to have to find ways to give this team the reinforcements they need so that they can not only make a push to the playoffs, but when they get there, have some sort of sustained success as well. So yeah, I'm with Big Walt here. They're going to have to make at least a couple moves here to support these guys.
So then I will pump the number up to 2.5. Over under 2.5 trades for Steve Stais. Last year, he just made the one, right? Vladimir Tarasenko to Florida for 2 picks, and then picked up Boris Kachuk on waivers. What do you foresee, over or under 2.5 trades between now and then? So I'm not saying on deadline day, but here in the 9 days leading up to it.
I think it's either going to be 2 or 3. So 2.5 is good. I don't. For me, it just makes so much sense to move Forsberg, Ross, but I'm worried they're not going to do it. But there's no other way to clear cap space in my mind.
And you have a replacement making league minimum who is unreal in Levi Marilainen.
Yeah, that's the thing. If there wasn't a clear, obvious internal answer, that's a different story. But there is a clear, obvious internal answer. So that question is solved. So, but I guess it's about finding the right partner too, Ross. Like it takes 2 to tango. So moving Forsberg is going to be one of the moves. I anticipate that's going to be a move where no NHL player is brought back. It's not going to be a hockey deal. It's going to be moving.
Well, you're hoping
forward.
You don't have to attach a pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're hoping you move him to a rebuilding team. Like I think Chicago would make a lot of sense.
That's a team that drafted him.
Yeah, exactly. So that works out nicely. And then, I mean, if you can get a late pick back, that'd be great. But if you just have to do it for future considerations, you got to do what you got to do. So that's one move.
Well, I got a question on that. Would you rather get a 5th round pick back for Anton Forsberg, but retain $1 million?
No.
Or would you rather
retain?
You'd rather give him away for absolutely nothing in return?
Yeah, it's about the cap space, and I feel bad. I don't want this to be like we're dunking on Forsy and send him to the moon and that kind of narrative, because that's not what I'm trying to spin here. It's more just looking at how this team is constructed and where cap space can be acquired. And unfortunately, that is the no-brainer spot where cap space can be acquired. And I still maintain, I think the Ottawa Senators are going to have to find some sort of way to bring back another goalie somehow, whether it's through trade or just picking up a guy on waivers or signing a veteran guy. They have to have some sort of plan C here if they go that route. So that's one move. And then I think they got to trade one of those 3rd-round picks to bring in a rental bottom 6 forward. So that's another move. And then if you want to get crazy with it, if Steve Stais wants to go for a big splash move, that would be interesting as well. But I don't think that's going to happen now. So I'll say JBD moving as well would be the 3rd move. So those are the Forsberg and JBD out, and a bottom 6 rental forward in would be the 3 moves I think would happen.
After hearing Keith Tkachuk and then reevaluating my own thoughts on how important this year is, for the right price, I'm starting to open up on trading a 1st-round pick. I know you're already without one of the next 2.
Whew.
But how many 1st-round picks they have in the lineup right now? This is the crew that needs to be able to get over the hump.
Totally.
I understand having a good prospect pool. I get it. We love looking at Yakimchuk scoring goals and be like, oh, one day it'll be sick.
Yep.
The days that are sick are the days when your team's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And this team clearly with their injuries that you cannot count that these guys will be healthy all the time. You need more depth in the NHL now.
So I will co-sign that, Ross. It scares me, but I will co-sign that. But if you're moving a first-round pick, it has to come to a player with term. We cannot move a first-round pick for a rental and have that idea that we're going to find out a way to figure out a way to sign him. You can't make that gamble again. Your prospect pool is too thin. You're already having to dispose of a first-round pick to the NHL. There's just too much value there that you can't use that first round pick to gamble on a guy that you think will just give you a boost this year. And then hopefully you can re-sign him, especially Ross, because guys on expiring deals, I don't think there's ever been a time, well, maybe a couple, but like this is one of the most advantageous times for players to become free agents because the cap raises have been projected and there's more money available now and bigger slices of the pie available now than there ever has been. So you'd be crazy, in my opinion, and agents probably say the same thing. You'd be crazy as a player if you got traded at the deadline to re-sign with that team without testing the market and at least getting into a bidding war come free agency. Like Mikko Rantanen, there's no chance he re-signs with the Hurricanes because on the free agent market, the bids are going to be through the roof for that guy.
Yeah, I guess that's for the top end players because we saw with the Vancouver trade, they've already re-signed both guys from the JT Miller trade. Well, the secondary part of the JT Miller trade. Both guys from Pittsburgh, they just locked up Drew O'Connor or Logan O'Connor. No, Logan O'Connor's in Colorado. Drew O'Connor, and then they signed Marcus Pettersson to an extension. So it can be done. You just have to be able to pay market value and I'm sure that agents are going off of percentage of the cap rather than the total number of dollars. We'll talk about this more, I'm sure, in the lead up to the trade deadline, but it's a very exhilarating, anxious, nervous time here to be an Ottawa Senators fan, but they're in a playoff spot. They're in the first wild card right now. It's all they can do. 16 of their last 26 games are on home ice. And in the third of those games against San Jose, the Hamburglar will return. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that news?
I love it, Ross. As a hashtag goalie friendly show, obviously it's been great having like the pizza line come back, them honoring Chris Neal,
Wade
Redden, guys like that. Yeah, Chris Phillips also. Like that's awesome, but you got to give some love to the tendies, and especially one that had a historic run like Andrew Hammond. Ross, I know you're quoted multiple times saying that was your most exciting time as an Ottawa Senators fan. Like you love the Hamburglar run because you were a part of it. You went to a bunch of those games.
No, just one. I was living in Halifax
just the
at
one.
The time.
Okay.
But the one game I went to, everyone will remember it. It was near the end. It was Easter weekend. They're playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that would have been pretty deep into it was game 80. It was game 80 out of 82.
Yep.
And they had gone to overtime in the 4 previous games. And they were coming off a shootout loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So at this point, they weren't so far back and it was a miracle. Now it's like, can you finish the job?
Yeah.
And Crosby scored 10 seconds into the game. And it was 3-0 Pittsburgh in the first period. I was like, did I jinx the
You ruined everything.
No. Hoffman ties it late. Or first, there's a Pajot shorthanded goal in the second period that got things rolling. And then Mark Stone again in overtime. So that was just so beautiful being at the game. Then they went on the road after that, shut out the Rangers 3-0. And then 2 days later got a 3-1 win where they got outshot 35-22 against Philadelphia. Steel snipe Selly, the Mark Stone story in that one. He had a breakaway goal doing just that. And for them, I believe they were 17, if not 14 points out of a playoff spot when the run started in February.
Go check out Senators' website. They have a little page for the Hamburglar, and it says originally 10 points out. The Senators found themselves in a wild card position with 99 points when the regular season came to a close. So I'm not sure when they're starting that point, but That's what it says on the website here. And obviously they talk about the 21-2 record with a 941 save percentage and a 1.79 goals against average. Crazy.
Well, and what's wild about that, he was 21-2, right?
Yes.
The Sens went 21-3-3 to finish the year. 21-3-3. And in those 27 games, they allowed 57 goals.
Yeah.
They became a juggernaut, and it was just an unreal time. It was so unexpected. It came out of nowhere, and the way it happened too, right? Brutal injury. Robin Leonard gets run over in the Carolina game. They lose that one 6-3, but they're continuing on home ice the next night, or 2 nights later. And Andrew Hammond gets a start against the Montreal Canadiens. The Sens get outshot 44-39 and get a 4-2 win. Then they beat the Florida Panthers 4-1. Now, it's not the Florida Panthers that you know today, Stanley Cup contenders. That was all great. You're like, okay, two wins, and they dominated that Florida game. Only 21 saves for Hammond. It was then they went out to the West Coast, the Death Valley trip at that point when it was LA, Anaheim, San Jose were all great teams. Hammond goes 3-0 shutout over Anaheim. 1-0 shutout over LA, get outshot 35-28 in that game. Continue the road trip with a 4-2 win in San Jose. That's probably best known for Zach Smith's penalty shot goal where he stopped up, like full stop slap shot goal. It was sick. Then they go to Minnesota. They get outshot 38-33 and they lose in a shootout. So you still get the point, but you lose in a shootout. Then they went into Winnipeg and get outshot 36-20 and get a 3-1 win. Like, it was unbelievable how often they were outshot heavily during this run. It wasn't just that this goalie went in and the team started playing better. He stole about 10 of his 21 wins. Stole them.
Yeah, and it's crazy how it started, Ross, because Andrew Hammond it was not like this is a guy that was lighting it up in the AHL and everyone's like, oh, it's his time. Or he's like
8-something save percentage.
Yeah, or he wasn't like this promising high round draft pick. Like, he was drafted. I'm looking at it now. He was undrafted.
Yeah, with the Bowling Green.
Yeah. But Ross, like, it's crazy. You look at the first 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 games. The lowest save percentage he had in the first 12 games was 923. A 923 save percentage was his lowest of the first 12 games of that run.
Yeah, so he went from an 898 save percentage with a 7-13-2 record in the AHL with a 3.51 goals against average to then playing 24 NHL games, 941 save percentage, 3 shutouts, and a 1.79 goals against average. 21-2. Honestly, incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, amazing. And it's one of those things you'll always remember. And like it was just to a point, Ross, where there wasn't even any discussion of like, oh, who's playing? It's obviously Hammond. And wasn't there for most of that stretch, he wasn't even practicing. They're just like, look, we're gonna run you to the ground. You're on some sort of hot streak right now, so don't even bother coming to practice. Like just hang out, rest up, and be ready to shut the door for your 18th straight start here.
Insane. Totally well-deserved. I still feel like he should be a Ring of Honor just because the story around Andrew Hammond is one that Sens fans will be passing on for generations.
Or Ross, we had the idea with the pizza line, put a pizza slice up. With the pizza slice, put a burger up. Like there should be some kind of fun thing.
Even just instead of one of the concession stands in the concourse, just have like the pizza line, pizza brought to you by Gabriel's or whoever's sponsoring it, and then just beside it, Hammy's Burgers.
Hammy's Burgers. Yeah. I mean, it's you got to celebrate those moments in history because the Ottawa Senators, relatively speaking, are a younger franchise. At least this iteration of the Ottawa Senators. Everybody remembers the Ottawa Senators back in the early 1900s, but this version
11-time
of them,
Cup champs.
Yeah. But this version is kind of young. So any of the history and the fun, nostalgic things you do have, you got to amplify those and celebrate them. And Ross, like there's Sens fans that are too young to even know or remember that. So you got to educate these people.
It is never going to happen again. It's a once in a lifetime event for the entire NHL. Nobody's going 21-2 to make playoffs on the last day.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like all the kind of contingencies to it. Cause I mean, Linus Ullmark, when he won the Vezina, didn't he go like 46-4 or something? So
10-6, 40-10-6.
Yeah. So he might've had a stretch that was close to that, but I mean, that's a totally different scenario and different story.
7 of the 20 wins were in overtime or shootout.
Yeah. That's crazy too. Yeah.
It's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
So you have to celebrate these moments. And that's what sports are about. It's an unsuspected star coming out of nowhere and just capturing the minds and hearts of everyone in the city, being like,
in the country, Ross, like CBC National News was talking about it.
He got a McDonald's for free for life card, I think.
No, he did. Yeah. And he talks about that. Yeah.
So we got to get Hammond on the show. We'll work on that here coming up. But let us know your favorite memory from the Hamburglar run. Truly an incredible moment in Sens history. And we look forward to being there to celebrate it on March 1st. So, Pillsy, final thoughts from me. Brady Tkachuk is not on the ice at practice for Team USA.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like Mike Sullivan and him just kind of have an agreement being like, look, we know you're banged up. Just take your time and you'll play tomorrow. I'm not letting it get me down, is what I'm saying, Ross.
I'm not letting it get me down, but I'm going to be pretty pissed if he doesn't play Saturday against Montreal.
I mean, if he plays Thursday, he's got to, unless he gets injured in that game.
Right. That's what I'm saying. He can't push through and be like, I'm giving everything I have here, and then not be able to play on Saturday and not be able to play well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I mentioned last episode, Ross. He's got to be focused on the Canadiens, not the Canadians.
Yeah, not the Canadians. Exactly. Pillsy, I also want to mention that with that game Saturday, on Friday, we will be doing a look at our most important Senators for the last 20 games of the season, 26 games. Who are the most important players for the Senators to have success down the stretch? We'll also have a game day or weekend preview on Friday. Tomorrow, we're hoping to get a great interview for you, so stay tuned for that. And Pillsy, any final thoughts from you, brother?
No final thoughts from me. This has been a great epi.
This has been a fun episode. 3 days until Sens hockey is back. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you for liking, watching, listening, engaging with the show. It means a lot to us. Those 5-star reviews, subscribing on YouTube, it all helps grow the brand that we bring you every single day. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.